We'll have Paul Catalina's top 5 in about 20 minutes. We have been asked by the site, by Colt Barber, who puts up every weekend our predictions of Baylor and Oklahoma State. Let's on the chat room, 254-339-1122 text line as well. And I know we have a lot of Oklahoma State fans, a bunch, and that's great. We love it. I'm trying to look at this like right here. I have contacts on. My eyes are not the same. My ears are absolutely not the same. Oklahoma State allowed 24 points once. They lost to Iowa State. Baylor allowed 24 points, I think, 3 or 4 times. They gave up 24 to Oklahoma State, lost. They gave up 24 to Texas and Brigham Young, and they won. They gave up 24 to Texas Tech, and they won. And then, of course, they gave up 29 to Iowa State and 30, which is still the hickey, to TCU. How can you look at this game? Baylor's won 3 straight. Oklahoma, Kansas State, tough-ass games. Texas Tech as well. And Oklahoma State, of course, has won every game since they lost to Iowa State. How can you look at this game? What makes you think, other than the game when they played was tight, that Baylor wins this game? And we're going to go the other way around as well.
Okay, I picked Baylor, and 23-20 is what I picked. I think there's a lot of emotion that goes into winning against your rival for the first time in what probably felt to them like 1,000 years. And having to get up again for the Big 12 championship game, a little tough. And I've got kind of a sneaky suspicion. I have nothing other than I think this is going to be, another bare knuckle brawl. It's going to be a close game all the way. I just think that maybe something weird happens. I'm not going to give you an X and O reason why Baylor shouldn't. All the X and O reasons are Oklahoma State, really, because they've been the better team all year long, really. But I just got a feeling. That's it.
Krager?
What's the question?
Why would Baylor win this game?
With all the
I'm asking, what's the question?
What I said, when you look at Baylor has allowed 24 points 6 point times during the year. And they've lost a couple of those to Oklahoma State and also TCU. Oklahoma State's allowed 24 points once, lost to Iowa State. When you look at that, plain evidence, why
gave up 33 last week.
You're right, 33 to Oklahoma. You're right. What is the reason Baylor wins on Saturday?
I don't have a lot of reasons. That's why I picked Oklahoma State. Baylor could win on Saturday. Reasons why I believe that they could win on Saturday is just that they're a really good football team, for one. I don't think Oklahoma State is just significantly better than them in any area. I mean, it'd be one thing if Oklahoma State had this, incredible defense and Baylor was just a middle-of-the-road defense, but they got a pretty good defense too. I don't think Oklahoma State's offense is that much better than Baylor's offense, or even I don't know. You could probably put them pretty evenly, quite frankly. So I think the nod just goes to Oklahoma State has an overall better defense, and just overall as a team you would lean their way. But I have hope for Baylor because I don't think that they're that much further back. You know what? Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
I think they're pretty even teams overall. So that alone, you put them on a football field at a neutral site with a championship on the line, anything can happen. I mean, that's how they can win this football game. I mean, X's and O's wise, no, I'm not going to say that they are going to be able to win because Gary Bohannon or Blake Shapen are able. No, they're not going to. There's not anything there that I can cling on to. I mean, it's simply going to come down to just who plays a cleaner football game. I mean, in my opinion, it's going to be who has the back-breaking penalties or doesn't, who has the back-breaking turnovers or doesn't. And even then, Spencer Sanders had 3 of them in the first go-round, and it managed to turn into 0 Baylor points. So there's not a lot to hold on to here, other than just the fact they're pretty even. It was a pretty even game the last time around when all was said and done because Baylor made their second-half run. Now, their only points were mustered in about a 15-minute period. And less than that actual game time. They had the late score at the end of the third quarter with Abram Smith had finally busted out the big run, which he's going to have to do that again this week. And then they had a touchdown drive right after that. But before, for 3 3/4 quarters, they had nothing. And then for 75% of the fourth quarter, they had nothing. So I don't know, man. There's other than them just being on a neutral site with a championship, and it's just 2 even teams. I mean, that's how Baylor can win, but I don't have anything like, Gary Bohannon or Abrams, I don't have any of that. No, I don't. And I don't have a lot. And Oklahoma State can win because they're just a slightly better team with a slightly better defense.
Here's some stats that jump out at me, and I'm not a stats guy very often. I used to be. Oklahoma State won by 10, and it was at home, and they lost the turnover battle 3-0.
Yeah.
That means something to me. 219 yards rushing to 107, and Abram Smith had 50-plus on one carry. That's a dominant stat sheet. Now, sometimes stats can lie, but Oklahoma State had a 401 to 280 and 50-something on the Abram Smith. Yes, Oklahoma State was hanging on, and then the Matt Jones penalty put them over the top. Golly,
it all points towards them. I mean, it does. There's no problem in saying that. It all points towards Oklahoma State. They dominated that first football game. Now, this is not the same Baylor team since then, and I think that they learned a lot from that Oklahoma State game. Now, they certainly didn't apply it in Fort Worth a few weeks later because they needed another reminder, and that's why they don't have a playoff spot potentially, even if they win this weekend. So, it all favors Oklahoma State on paper and based on the eye test that we saw earlier this year. But then again, that was 2 months ago. I know Oklahoma State hasn't gotten any worse, and they've probably gotten better. Spencer Sanders, obviously, when he's on, and he was on at times last week, he's one hell of a player. So you can't bank on him throwing 3 picks again. But, yeah, man, I think this is a game where Baylor's going to have to find points where they can, and I'd imagine that's going to be a lot of field goals potentially because I don't see them getting down in the red zone and just making magic happen against this defense. So I think you're going to need some big plays, and if you get some turnovers, you're going to have to actually score points off of those turnovers. But, yeah, I don't know. There's not just like a proven method for beating Oklahoma State.
3-point lead with 12 minutes left, and then it ended up being 24-14. Oklahoma State, Sanders threw 3 picks. Is that right? Yeah, threw 3 picks, a couple of them deep in the Baylor territory, and they still won the game. Now, maybe home field advantage offsets some of that as well. I've been looking forward to this. No, I did not think. In fact, I said when Gary Bohannon threw the pick on the sideline that ended the game with TCU, I said Baylor's chance to win a Big 12 title just died. I was wrong. I don't care. I did. That's what I thought because it was such a bad loss. Not that you don't have those.
Well, and Oklahoma was coming off of starting to look pretty good.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams is there, and they're on the up, and then Oklahoma rolls into Waco, and Baylor just physically mauled them.
They play that game. They beat Oklahoma State. And that doesn't mean it's a given. But that's, I love the way they battled against Kansas State, overcame the loss of their quarterback. Just a fun – it's a refreshing game. It's refreshing. Yes, Baylor was there 2 years ago and lost to Oklahoma in 2 games that were both down to the wire. Oklahoma State back in it. Good for Mike Gundy. I think it's great, Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State, along with what Baylor's done. Iowa State with Matt Campbell. What Patterson did for many, many years. And what Oklahoma on and off did. I thought Oklahoma's defense against Oklahoma State, despite giving up 37, I thought their defense played out of their gourd with disruptive plays on the front 7 for Oklahoma and had that game, it seemed like, sealed. Both teams with bad turnovers, too. I love the fact that this game, I don't have to sit there and think it's going to be who can score 50. I think this could be 24-20, 21-17, and it would be great to see both of them get a chance to win a Big 12 title. I really do. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think if you're a person who really loves wide open offense, this game's not probably going to be.
By the way, did you see a dumb comment from Spencer Petras, the Iowa quarterback? He made mention of, gosh, what was it? He was asked about something, and I have to go back and find it. But he mentioned, like, oh, this isn't like the Big 12. We actually play defense. It was something along those lines. And I was like, I understand you play on Saturdays, so you don't get to watch a lot. But this is the dumbest year to ever say that. Like, that just tells me, or just further confirms to me that people just read stuff and they just soak it in as though it's
lazy.
And look, I'm not blaming a kid or a young man who's busy playing college football for not knowing everything about college football, but the whole Big 12 doesn't play defense thing, you just sound like you don't know what you're talking about when you say that this year in particular, because that's all the Big 12 does is play defense. That is what they do, is they play defense better than anything else that they do, including offense because that is not their bread and butter anymore. So I thought that was just kind of emblematic of still a stereotype of the conference that's been around for several years. But if you're going around saying that, just know that you sound dumb to people who actually watch it because it's not like that anymore.
Other than Oklahoma, Texas and Texas Tech early on, when it was 70-35. Have we seen even like 2 or 3 examples of that?
No.
And look, 37-33 in Bedlam last week was more indicative of a couple of really bad special teams plays and some turnover. I mean, those kind of muff punts.
Easy scores.
So it wasn't.
All right, let's go to the chat room to close out the segment, and you guys pop on when you can. Oklahoma State from Nohami. I don't know if that's saying your name right. Number 3 defense in the country, there's no question. They are an elite defense. Baylor's is good too, but they have had a couple of times when it slipped away. Donnie Hand, who's an Oklahoma State fan, Baylor wins if they are able to take advantage of Oklahoma State's weak secondary. From Andrea Cameron, Baylor wins 30-24.
That's something they are going to have. I'm not saying Oklahoma State secondary is weak, but I think that's one area where maybe they haven't been challenged fully because their run defense is so dadgum good and they're just so disruptive. But the Baylor receivers, Tyquan Thornton is going to, they're all going to have to make tough catches. They're going to have to make tough catches. They are going to have to be physical. And at times the Baylor receivers haven't been that way. But they have no choice if they want any chance of success because Baylor's not just going to line up and run the football. They tried that in the first game, and you saw what happened. Not even close to 100 yards without that late third quarter Abram Smith touchdown. They barely have 50 rushing yards. So that's not going to cut it, obviously. It's a little bit concerning with Blake Shapen back there just because of his inexperience.
If that's who plays.
But even then, Gary Bohannon didn't play well in the first game when these two teams played.
And now his hamstring is.
And if he can't run, then what's the point? Honestly, he's not that great of a thrower to where you go like, oh, well, he doesn't need to. No, Gary Bohannon needs to run to be as effective as he can be. And the Petrus thing, he was saying this won't be like a big this Saturday won't be like a game like a Big 12 game for quarterbacks is what he said.
2 players from Oklahoma State did make the All Big 12 defensive secondary with Jarek Bernard Converse and also with Colby Harvell Peel, and then Petrie, of course, from Baylor. And on the second team secondary, Oklahoma State, a third, 3/4 of their secondary with Christian Holmes making second team All Big 12 as well.
But I think that's where you're going to have to hit them, is you're going to have to hit them through the air. That's the only way to open things up, and I don't know if they can do it consistently enough, but they have no choice. And if they can't do that on Saturday, well, then it's going to be a repeat of the last time these two teams played.
From Jim Wilhelm, Oklahoma State secondary, Donnie, you think is weak? Did you miss the All Big 12 team today? I just mentioned that. I didn't know. Sam Kim, if the Pokes year, I think Baylor will need a lot of breaks to pull off the upset. Baylor will win because they're hungry. Beating Oklahoma took a bit out of Oklahoma State.
I do wonder about that a little bit, like just the kind of letdown of just the emotions of that game, because you do see that often. You see it, look at UTSA just a couple of weeks ago, right? They had that big win. They had to pull out to stay unbeaten, and they turn right around and just get walloped. And so there is something to be said for emotions, but I don't know. I think this Oklahoma State team's pretty locked in on what they're doing. And I think just getting that win, as much as it probably took out of them in some ways, it put so much more back in them. So I'm not going to rely on that. Look, I'll say it again. Oklahoma State's got a lot in their favor in this game. And Baylor's going to basically have to play a perfect game or close to it and hope for some mistakes on the other side. Now, I'm not saying that like Oklahoma State's so dominant that Baylor's going to need breaks to keep it close or anything, but to win this game, I do think they're going to have some things go their way.
All right, Donnie talking about the possibility of putting pressure on Baylor and Gary Bohannon. I don't remember that game as far as sacks in that game, but
I don't know if they got one. They definitely pressured him a lot, but I don't know in terms of sacks if they even got one officially. They may have. I know. No, because they haven't given up a sack all year, right?
Who?
And that the Baylor offensive line. Wasn't that the stat I saw, or was that now over? I don't quite remember.
Damn, I didn't even think about that.
Okay, they're giving zero.
Well, all right. When we come back, we will be on live, by the way, from AT&T Stadium on Saturday from 9 until 10:30. Armstrong and Jack will be there. All 3 of us will be there. We hope you're there on the chat room as well. 365 Sports and Sikkim 365 Radio.